Welcome to Lecture 3. In this lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about some programming languages, ones in popular use as well as some historical ones. The earliest programming language that was a high-level language was called Fortran, and it was developed by IBM in the mid-50s, and it was for pretty much scientific stuff. I wouldn't say it's widely still used, but it is still used. COBOL is another example of a language that still exists, is a monstrously old, outdated way of programming, and although there are still some code bases in existence, if I were you, I would do everything in my power to avoid ever coding in either of those two languages again. Pascal is a language that most of the people my age learned as one of their first major programming languages. It has been superseded by more modern languages, but it was made for teaching. Ada is a Department of Defense language based roughly on Pascal, developed in the 70s and 80s. Not many people still use Ada. The government has given up on their mandate to use it. BASIC still exists. There's now, Visual Basic and that sort of thing, but people are moving away from it. Objective-C was an object-oriented language based on both C and Smalltalk. It was popular for a while because it was used to develop iOS applications. But things have moved on, and really all new apps are typically developed in Swift, which is Apple's new language. Objective-C was kind of clunky and hard to work with. Swift is the new language that Apple introduced to supersede Objective-C. It's pretty powerful, it's pretty modern. Java is a descendant of C and C++, which is object-oriented and much simpler. I tend to prefer Java and C# over C++ any day of the week, as they are cleaner and simpler, more modern languages. Visual Basic, as I mentioned, was an extension of BASIC for the modern era. C# is another descendant of C++. It looks a lot like Java. I think it's a very clean language. PHP is an open source scripting language, which I personally think is garbage, but it is used. Python is another object-oriented language. I wouldn't call it a scripting language, though. It is widely used, particularly in data science and AI. It's kind of goofy in some ways, but it is a useful and modern language. JavaScript is the most widely used scripting language. It's part of almost every web page. We'll run into it, guaranteed. Ruby on Rails was popular in the 90s, but is declining quite a bit. I don't know anybody doing new projects on it. Scala is a more modern language that runs on the Java virtual machine, and it integrates well with Java, and it is extremely becoming more popular. Now, C++ is not my favorite language. I think it is ancient. I think it has a lot of difficulty that it doesn't need to have. That said, it's not my choice whether or not Harper teaches it, but I think there are a lot better and more modern languages to use. But C and C++ are the other languages that we'll be discussing a little bit. C was implemented by Dennis Ritchie and Brian Kernighan at Bell. It was widely known because it was part of Unix, which is now morphed into Linux. It's very good for operating systems code. C++ evolved from C, and it is basically the addition of the class construct to C. ANSI does standardize both C and C++. And the latest standard of C++ is C11, and there's also C17. C++ began life as an extension to C. C++ also provides object-oriented facilities to C, and a set of standard libraries, which have become very popular, the standard template libraries, which you'll learn a little bit about. One thing you should keep in mind when building software is use a building block approach to create programs. Avoid reinventing the wheel. Use existing pieces and try to reuse wherever you can. This is called software reuse. When programming in C++, you will rely heavily on classes and functions from the standard template library, and classes and functions you and your colleagues create, and from third parties. One thing is, when you can, use the standard library because they're probably faster and more efficient than what you can build yourself, because lots of people have spent a lot of time building them. Also, STL is portable between different implementations of C. So that concludes our high-level overview of programming languages. And now we'll move on to get into more detail with C++ in specific.